If a kid happens to say, "Can I have the blue towel?" Sure. But to constantly give the impression that you have the choice, you have the opinion, you have the say, when you're not really saying that. That's what I say, and I think it's in the book. You ask the child, "You want the blue towel or the orange towel?" The kid says, "I want the yellow towel." You say, "No, blue or orange." So what are you doing? What are you doing? But in the long run, yeah, it works in the short term, which is always the danger. A threat also works short term, or even spanking, or it works. Wow, makes your job so much easier. But in the long run, you're going to get a reaction and a rebellion and resentment. So the question is, what in overall view of life, what are you telling the child?
Mhm.
You're trying to give the impression that the child has freedom of choice, but only the choices you give. So it's kind of a strange, non-real scenario. It's choice, but it's not really choice. That shouldn't happen. That's the whole point. The whole point is that children need consistency. They thrive on consistency. And when a child starts to resist you, something's already wrong. Sure, you can get around it by playing nice and by. But what is the issue? Why is there resistance in the first place? And that's where obedience, there's a whole section there on obedience is absolutely essential for a child's sanity. If he can't obey, then he can't function. That's real life, true to life. Question is, what exactly do we mean by obedience? Do we mean dumb the kid down so that he doesn't have to think for himself? Because you're going to make all the decisions and the child is just going to obey? That's not what we mean. We don't want a child that doesn't think. God forbid.
Right.
What we want is a child who is empowered to obey. Because laziness, willfulness, spitefulness all work to make the child resist. A child who can get past all of that is empowered to obey. That gives the child strength of character, uh, true confidence in themselves, not arrogance or bluster. That's a healthy child. Well, the best thing to do is to do some catch up. What you would have said or would have told the child a year ago, tell him now. Now you can say it even in more intelligent terms because he's a little bit older. So you say to a child, a soldier obeys not because he's brainless, that would not make a good soldier. A soldier obeys because he can. He can because little things won't stop him, little things won't discourage him, little things won't frighten him. So he is capable of obeying where the non soldier is simply not capable. So the non soldier who doesn't obey orders is not because he's thinking for himself, it's because he's trapped within himself. Amazing. And we see it all the time. You see a child who can't, I can't, I can't. And then all of a sudden you give him a little bit of motivation. Yes, he can. That's like these trained animal acts. Every time the animal does what it's supposed to, you feed him some goodie. So, you have to keep giving him the sugar or the whatever it is, the reward on the spot, because that's the only motivation they have. So again, in the short term, it works. But what is your long-term message? Don't ever do anything that doesn't have an immediate reward. If there's no lollipop waiting, don't do it. On the contrary, you want to show a child by offering a lollipop what the child is capable of so that you don't need the lollipop next time around. But you don't want a kid to get addicted to lollipops because there's an adult version of that too. I think we're naturally wired to repeat what we experienced. The way we were raised, that's how we're going to raise our children. We don't want to do that. So we consult with books and with writers and with advisors and we start raising children with some very foreign concepts. And it becomes a little awkward. And the child feels like he's being raised by a book instead of a mother. It feels like a classroom rather than a home. So what works in the classroom, and it's fine for the classroom because keeping discipline is requirement number one because you got 30 kids in the room. It's not the same as raising a child. But much of the advice that parents are given comes from the experiences of teachers and kindergarten monitors, what works for them. It doesn't always apply at home. It's a different task, it's a different mission. Yeah, well, I was comparing I was comparing it to a sergeant in terms of what he disciplines, not the way he disciplines. You don't use the barking tone of a sergeant, obviously. I don't know why the sergeants use it either, but in practical things, in simple things, if a child is riding a bicycle and you see them doing something that isn't the best for maintaining the balance or for being safe or whatever, and you tell them it'll work better if you pedal this way or you hold the handlebar this way, the child doesn't resent it. You show a child how to swing a bat, how to climb a rope ladder, they never resent it because you're working with them and not against them. Whereas when you discipline a child for misbehaving, now there's a clash. You're telling the child that he's wrong. Child becomes a little bit defensive. So you're the attacker and he's the defender. That could go very bad. But when you're on the same page, he wants to ride the bicycle and you're helping him ride it better. There's no clash here. There's no insult. There's no rejection. Unless you're impatient and you're condemning his inability or his failure, which is, of course, not the point. The point is, if you're doing something, do it right. And all the examples of the stories of the previous Rebbe as a child, in almost every story, you see it that way. It's good behavior, but here's how you do it right. No, no. I don't think a child needs constant compliments, but attention is a compliment. You're paying attention, you noticed what the child did, you care that the child do it better. That's in a sense that is a compliment. Without without the cheap part of it. So constantly telling a child, oh, you're the greatest, you're the cutest, you're the best, you're so smart, you're so. Eventually, the child stops believing you because children are not stupid. It gets a little thin
Mm-hmm.
again and again. And yeah, sure, sure, sure. That's what mothers always say. But paying attention never grows old, and it never grows thin. Oh, what? You're paying attention to me again? Yeah. That never grows old. And the same thing is the other concept about criticizing a child the next day, not the same day. Because again, you've been thinking about me all this time. You remembered what I did yesterday or 2 days ago. There's a compliment in that somewhere, but it's a healthy kind of compliment. Look, a child can be made to feel completely insignificant, unimportant, unnecessary, and somewhat of an annoyance. Like, how many times do I have to tell you? Oh, so raising me is a burden that you resent? Thank you very much. I don't know if a child consciously thinks that, but it certainly leaves that impression. So we got to be careful not to ever uh, suggest that unintentionally. On the contrary, I'm paying attention, I notice, I remember, I bother to bring it up. That is so empowering. That makes the child feel significant, which is a lot better than feeling like an unnecessary annoyance. Well, it's like you're so disappointed in the child's childishness. You're such a baby. You realize that you are too. In your own way, you're such a baby. So when you say to the child, don't be a baby, don't forget to include yourself. When you say, be a little more thoughtful, be a little more responsible, be a little more selfless. What, and you don't have to? So it's not like the child is an alien and needs to be taught things that no one on earth ever. It's the same things. It comes in child size, and it comes in adult size, but it's the same thing. And when you do that, it sounds more, I don't know, more sympathetic, that you're not distancing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're not saying, I'm an adult and you're an idiot. I'm important and you're an annoyance. That's terrible. But when you think, we're suffering from the same thing. I need to grow up. You need to grow up. So let me help you. Then it's a different tone. It's a different feel. Yeah. So the Rebbe Rashab said when the Rebbetzin said he's only a child, and
Mm-hmm.
the Rebbe Rashab said a child very soon becomes an adult, and when you become an adult, that's when you realize what a child you are. So don't make that great distance. The child is not that different from you, and the child's needs are not that different than your own, and the child's weaknesses are not that different from your own. It's a human condition. Of course, you can't control everything, and external things, external to the family, can make a child unhappy. But then you got to fix it. At home, there's only happiness. I'll break it down a little bit. Sitting at a table, anytime, dinner, Shabbos, Yontif, The child should never feel uncomfortable or unsafe sitting at the table. This is not a time for criticizing. It's not a time for ridiculing. It's not a time for rejection, for discipline. Not at the table. The table must be the safe space. It's got to remain safe. So when there's a need for disciplining or criticizing, it shouldn't be at the table. Aside from, you have to know how to criticize, but at the table, never. Just like in public, you never criticize or discipline your kid in public.
Mm-hmm.
It's too shaming. It's too embarrassing. So there are times for criticism or for disciplining, and there are times when you do not. You don't want the child to feel any discomfort associated with sitting at the table with you. That's when you're family, when you're nurturing, when everything is safe. That's at the very least. At the very least, the family meal should be absolutely safe, comfortable, and inviting. Again, if the child is unhappy about something, the family, the home should heal it, should compensate for it, because it certainly shouldn't be coming from the home. It's never the home that's making the child unhappy. Because then what hope does the child have? There's an interesting phenomenon in the healing arts. There are children, even adults, if you console them, they hate you. They resent it. Tell them, it's not so serious, you'll be fine. They hate it. This is called aggravation from consolation. So some people, no matter how upset they are, if you make nice and you tell them it's good and you give them a hug, everything's fine. But then there are those who, if you try to be nice and give them a hug when they're upset, they get more upset. Consoling backfires. And usually that happens to people whose misery or unhappiness comes from the family. In other words, those who should be giving him comfort are causing him pain. So now if you come along and try to give him comfort, you're aggravating, because the people who give comfort are the ones who are hurting me. So comforting is now associated with pain. That's why you have to be really careful when you say to a child, it's nothing. Don't be upset, it's nothing. So now anytime somebody tries to reason and say, it's not so serious, you're the enemy. Don't say it's nothing. Because you can imagine what that feels like. You're raising the kid for the kid to say it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got a good kid.
Mm-hmm.
If you enjoyed this conversation or this topic, and you're looking for more information, or you want to hear it again from another angle, there is a way to do that. And that is in this book. It's all there. Order it from Amazon. You can read it, reread it, and share it. We have a Sunday night program for VIPs that you might be interested in. It's informal. It's questions and answers. It's conversation. It's really relaxed. It's really pleasant, enjoyable, informative, and kind of community-like. It's a Sunday night program. There's a Wednesday morning program for the VIPs, and there's a Wednesday night program. all of it just conversation, casual, laid back, unscripted. So join us, take a look, click the link below and see which of the three suits you best, and join us for some enjoyable conversation.